Okay, hi. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Creator Hangout with Kickstarter. Today, our special guest is Brian Fargo. We're so excited and so lucky to have him here. My name is Stephanie Pereira. I am talking to you all from Kickstarter HQ in Brooklyn, New York. Brian is joining us all the way from Newport Beach, California. So we've got a bi-coastal thing going on here. We're just super excited to do this. So for those of you watching, those of you just jumping in, the plan today is to have a great 30-minute talk with Brian. We're going to talk to him about many years of making RPGs, a few years now of running super successful, highly engaged Kickstarter projects, and just, whatever you want to ask him. So please send us your questions. We will put them to Brian. Brian will answer your questions. We'll do our best to make sure everyone feels answered. I think it'll be great. So, hi, Brian.
Well, hi, Stephanie. Thank you for having me on. I'm a big fan of Kickstarter, as you know. You guys have been a real lifesaver for the kind of games I make.
Yeah, I mean, I was with the company in 2012 when you launched that first project, and I remember we were like, "This is cool."
Well, however cool you thought it was, I thought it was cooler. It was in 2011, and I was doing a keynote in Shanghai talking about kind of these classic role-playing games, and my speech was almost the death of these kind of games because I saw no way to get them funded, and then it was flash forward to what I think it was April or May of 2012, and this concept of like, well, don't go to publishers, just go to the very audience that wants it, and maybe they'll help you finance it, which was a concept that I had never dreamed of, and of course we did it, and it was a success, and it was just it was an emotional moment.
Yeah, I think, and it's it's been like 3 years now, and we've proved it over and over again that the fans will make it happen if you bring them the projects they want to see, right?
Absolutely.
So, so we're talking to you now at the tail end of your third campaign with us, which is to do Bard's Tale. You have like 54 hours left to go or something like that.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what that feels like to be sort of at the tail end of such a roller coaster adventure. So much money, but also over 30,000 people supporting your project and celebrating your project. Can you just share a little bit about what's that like and what you're feeling right now?
Yeah. Well, it feels wonderful. My kind of the pinnacle of my career before was back in the 90s, and there wasn't much in terms of social media or really knowing the individuals. And so the fact that I can go out and that my reputation is known enough that people believe me and sort of, it's one big honor system if you think about it. I mean, they're giving the money up front and saying, we trust you. So it feels great that they're giving me that trust to do it. And the fact that we're on this third campaign and we have, as you say, 30,000 people so far, and we still have a couple days to go. That's a lot of people, and it just feels great, and these campaigns are a lot of work. I mean, I used to describe it like the kind of the old Jerry Lewis telethons. I mean, you're on every single day, and you're having to come up with new assets and keep it fresh and try to get in the press and answer people's questions, and it really, in many ways, it brings your life to a halt during that time, at least if you're doing it right. And so I've certainly, that's been the case for me.
Yeah, but worth it, I guess, right?
Oh yeah, no, listen, I wouldn't give it up for anything, but it's it's the closest thing to a live event, right? Like if you think, there's no aspect of this business for me that's been like a live event, perhaps maybe like a trade show, but this is like launching a Broadway play. And there's all sort of the nervousness of leading up to the launch day, and because you're putting your personal self out there. I mean, you're flogging yourself in the public square. Your family's watching you. Your peers are watching you. Everybody is watching, and if you fail, everybody's going to see it. So the pressure the night before is just every time it drives you crazy. I mean, I don't care the first one, the second one, the third one, because every one has different dynamic changes, and you can never assume that if you've had success before, you'll have it again. And so, because every time you go, there's the nagging doubt and the people saying why this one won't work. So it's always nerve-wracking.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing that such a seasoned professional like you still has those doubts. It's kind of amazing to me. With that experience in mind, and also just sticking with the Kickstarter narrative for a little bit longer, knowing, okay, we know your emotional state going in has been consistently like, oh my God, what if? But what about, there must be a difference from when you launched that first project, when you hit launch that first time versus this third time. What did you learn from then till now that you maybe changed or helped you figure things out a little bit better?
Well, yeah, I certainly always run with a certain sense of paranoia so that it kind of keeps me on my toes for what could happen. And, the first one was, Tim Schafer had gone with his, and there was this sort of was he a one-off, maybe that was just a one-time fluke edge case. And so when we went out, that was the kind of the prevailing thought, and I knew that I felt that getting out there quickly was important, and that we become the second one. So I went from seeing his campaign to launching in almost 30 days. That's unheard of now. We have to do so much more prep work. But so the story of getting out and kind of can lightning strike twice. That was what was about that campaign. And so our prep materials was more me talking and me doing the kind of the funny video with the kid, and sort of I was channeling my frustration on trying to get games made over the last 2 decades, and people could kind of feel that. And so that's a very different campaign to say even what Torment was, which was more like kind of a 4-month preparation, and I had to get the all-star cast together and get some concept screens. And so that was a different launch. And then you get to Bard's Tale 4, which was that, and now you're going into where getting the press to recognize what you're doing is so much more difficult than it was even a year ago. They're very jaded. And in some ways, talking about Kickstarter to them is like fingernails on a chalkboard. It's like the last thing they want to hear. So you're really scrambling with trying to come up with things that are newsworthy in light of, in my particular case, in the video game space, you're up against press that Warner Brothers is doing or Disney is doing. And so, we came up with this, the video, the in-engine footage of Bard's Tale, which looks spectacular. And we spent a lot of time, money, and effort putting that together. And that was not something that I needed to have done a couple of years ago. And so I think you're going to see the stakes go up each time. And so I sort of treat Kickstarter almost like I'm launching a web company. And so I think some people have this assumption that they'll just throw something on Kickstarter and it will take care of itself, and Kickstarter is going to bring in the traffic and all will be good. And that can't be further from the truth.
Right. Well, we help some, I hope.
Yeah, well, some, but I just say, you can't. I'm not going to leave my fate to that. I have to do my best to bring the traffic.
No, I think that's really good advice. So, and I hope everyone heard it, because it is really important to know that having a well-crafted story is a huge part of what it means to do these things these days. So I want to go to some of the questions from our viewers. And before I do, I just want to remind those viewers who have not submitted questions, you totally can. We're going to be talking to Brian for 20 more minutes. We'll get in as many questions as we can. So I'll start with one that we got on Facebook, who is a video game design student at UC Santa Cruz. And he wants to know what you think is missing from most modern RPG game design.
Right. Well, I have to say, in the most recent past, there's been some wonderful stuff that's been coming out. Something like Witcher 3 has done a great job, and look at Fallout 4 looks strong. And I guess for one, to think about role-playing games, there's such diversity there, right? So between something like a Baldur's Gate type product where it's very quest oriented, or something we're doing with Torment, which is more narrative oriented, or Bard's Tale 4, which is a dungeon crawl. So when you talk about what's missing, it kind of have to go category by category in a way. But I would say, to answer more specific to that, and what we saw was missing, especially as it related to Wasteland and Torment, was that kind of the old school, and I hate to use that, I think that phrase gets overused a bit, but there was those role-playing games in the 90s had this wonderful cause and effect, where you could do things and it would actually have an effect in the world. It wouldn't be like you'd make one decision and do another and they'd end up at the same place. But there was truly these long macro changes and subtle things. You could make a decision and 40 hours later, you could feel that. And I think that in a lot of cases, role-playing games were becoming more cinematic in nature. It's very expensive to do those cinematics. And if you want to make a game that's truly changing based upon your gameplay, you have to commit to creating a bunch of content that you know people will never see, because that they go hand in hand. So that if you do something and I do something different, that you're not going to see what I did and vice versa. And so that content is basically thrown away for you. And so making that strong commitment to things that people won't see is what makes them super interactive. And I think that's kind of a component that we've really tried to bring back to the table in spades.
That's fantastic. And really quickly, I realized I asked for questions, but I didn't say how to submit them. So for folks watching, you could submit them here in the Google Plus page. You can submit them as a question or as a comment. We're also on Twitter, so if you prefer to just tweet at us, we're at Kickstarter Tips, and we will make sure to we're following that feed. So send your questions there. We're happy to take them. So building perfectly off what you were just talking about, we got some questions, of course, about Bard's Tale 4. And people are really curious about sort of what's going on behind the curtain. And maybe if you can share some more details about how NPCs will behave, or if you don't reach all your stretch goals, what combat might look like, or even some of the save function, which I don't know much about, but any of that stuff, I think people would love to hear you talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. So, well, I think the trickiest part with making sequels to games that are 10 or 20 years old are that, a lot of people have been, that's the last incarnation of what they've seen. And so under normal circumstances, there would have been incremental changes over all the years, whereas now we're like leaping forward 2 decades. And so how do you capture what made those games great, yet recognize the modern gamer and all the innovations that have been made? And so that's why, that's why these types of questions come up. Like Save Game is a perfect example, where the original Bard's Tale, you could play for hours, but there was like one save spot in the Adventurers Guild, and it made tension super high. You had to go in, and you could just lose 2 hours worth of work. And so, and that made it fun at a certain level, but in today's gamer, that just doesn't work. And so there's a question of, of saving the game, and people are afraid that we're only going to do save spots, which is more of a console-oriented thing. And that's not what we're going to do. But what we're trying to do is experiment with tension and save game. So perhaps, maybe you can save game anywhere, but there's a benefit for not doing so. But those are the kind of tensions we want to create. And as far as NPCs go, one of the things about role-playing games is you create your party, and they're your group. And they can't be speaking or saying a bunch of crazy things, because they're supposed to be represent. In your mind, you created a female trow warrior, and you have a certain version of who that person is, and she can't be quipping and saying odd things that aren't consistent with your thought of that. So we have NPCs that join the party, and they really give it the kind of the personality and life, and there was a game, Planescape Torment. I represent Morty, was this floating skull that was a wise ass, and he really gave the game its charm. Or if you think of some of the characters, Bill Paxton from Aliens, who was whining and complaining about why don't you put the little girl in charge then? We love that stuff. So we like to leave a slot open for that, for NPCs that can join the party and give it with that personality. And so, but fundamentally, there's going to be 6 slots you can control, 5 of which are players that you create, 1 which joins your group, but that 1 could be, 1 of 20. I don't know what the final number is going to be. Sure. And that person has a chance to have personality. And then on top of that, there are summon slots, which is very much sort of a throwback to the old Bard's Tale game in terms of for the party the ability to both summon creatures or perhaps possess creatures from the other side of the board and bring them into your group and make them fight against the other side.
Wow, I cannot believe how complicated this is. It's very impressive. So we have a question from TJ Fowler. He's posted it as a comment in Google+. He says, you've mentioned movies like Mad Max have inspired you a lot for the first Wasteland. Were there any other dystopian or post-apocalyptic movies from the 80s that were inspirational for making Wasteland 1 or 2 that may be unknown to the masses?
Well, I think A Boy and His Dog was one. I love the humor and the dystopian kind of sense that had. I guess other movies were, I mean, they weren't straight up post-apocalyptic in terms of like nuclear bombs falling, but The Omega Man with Charlton Heston had a huge impact, and it was kind of zombie-ish in a way, but he was like kind of the last man on Earth. Soylent Green was another Charlton Heston film. The inspiration, and you know, another favorite movie of mine was Planet of the Apes. Again, kind of a weird end of the world type stuff that I enjoyed, and then it was a lot of reading on top of that. But I think that The Road Warrior was kind of the obvious big in terms of like a light bulb going on of this civilization that it somehow seemed all plausible. You know, that, you know, it's typical science fiction, which I love, is like 1,000 years in the future and very alien, whereas something where we kind of get thrown back to the Stone Ages in a way, but we still have technology, I always found fascinating.
Yeah, so I'm the same.
We'll have to both see a shrink and see why we like it so much.
What's wrong with us? Why do we want the world to end?
Yeah.
So we have another question from, I'm assuming, a backer, another fan of here in Google+. He wants to know if you're going to hire Chris Avallone anyway if you don't meet the stretch goal for it.
Well, we're always trying to. Yeah. Well, we're always going to try to find a way to do business with Chris. You know, I mean, right now my focus is on trying to make sure we hit the stretch goal. But you know, I'll just say that I think our doing business with Chris Avallone is not going to go away forever, one way or the other.
That's a good answer. So we have a question from Twitter. It's a really wonderful question. How important do you feel that it is to make a Kickstarter game DRM free? So a little philosophy, sort of politics here.
Well, I you know, our backers tend to be more on kind of the hardcore side of things, and they are very focused on digital rights management and sort of the fairness of it all. So I know, I believe we have that. I think that's, you know, we work with GOG and Steam, and we do that because we recognize that there is a group of people that want their games DRM free, and that's why we work with GOG. So I would say that, yeah, I mean, and it's in a way it's kind of like a Linux, right? It's a small part of the overall audience, but they're very vocal about it, and we don't mind. We try to support them where we can because they're amongst the most loyal too. So we try to recognize that.
Totally, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's, you know, one of the things about bringing your game to Kickstarter, right? It's not a unidirectional relationship. These fans do become a part of the making of the thing.
Yeah, well, and having that relationship is for us. It's everything, you know. And to me, it transcends just Kickstarter. It's that we need to be constantly I mean, we're a business, right? So we need to make money in order to survive. But we try to make sure that goodwill is a big part of it. You know, like we did a Wasteland. We're doing an update for Wasteland 2. We're calling it the Director's Cut, and we did all these major upgrades. It's sort of like a bucket list of stuff we always wanted in the game. We wanted quirks and perks, and we wanted an aim shot system, and we wanted to do a graphic overhaul, all the stuff that we always wanted to do. So anyway, now we're doing it, and we're giving it away for free for anybody who ever bought the game. Some companies would come out and say, hey, maybe we could charge them another $10 for this, right? But to me, it's just not worth, you know, the goodwill of trying to get an extra $10. You know, I'd rather just do it. And so it transcends, and I think that's how. Because we only survive because if our fans feel like we're treating them honest, intellectually honest all the way, and being fair within the context of also trying to survive as a business, which they understand and respect.
Yeah, that's so smart. And I think A lot of people will start thinking that way if they aren't already. So we have a lot of fan questions here in the Google Plus Hangout world. A couple people want to know if we're going to see the return of the review board in Bard's Tale 4.
Yes, we are going to bring back the review board, the Adventurers Guild, Roscoe's Energy Emporium. Though Roscoe is no longer alive, it'll be his grandson or what running the place. But yeah, the throwbacks to me are critical, you know, and we do things such that if you never played the first games, it doesn't matter. Like there's nothing, you're not losing anything. But if you did, you'll appreciate kind of all these little things, because I think that's one of the tricky parts also with doing sequels. Well, just in general, especially if there's a long period of time between it, because like for me, I've gone on and done so many games since then that they're not as fresh in my mind as some people have continued to play them over the years. And so I know for them that when they play Bard's Tale 4, it'll be like they just finished Bard's Tale 3 the day before, right? And they're just starting number 4. For me, it'll feel like, well, I haven't really looked at it for 20 years. And so I have to be super tuned in to that fact. And I almost have to reacquaint myself with all the detail, because I've done so many games during that time. And it's also, by the way, why the communication with the fans and why we set up the boards, because they're wonderful at reminding us of things, and we're okay with that, and things that are really important to that. And so, just having fresh eyes from different perspectives helps us craft a better product.
That's cool. I love that. So this is somebody who has been there, it looks like, with you all along, DJ Grom. He loved your old Bard's Tale clue books. Are there any plans to create a companion clue book when the game is complete?
I don't know. We haven't much thought about that. Clue books are a funny thing, because this was before the internet. You know, you would actually make clue books and then you'd sell them and that sort of thing. So it seems like that the users end up creating those things faster than we do almost at this point. But it's not to say that we wouldn't. I always vacillate between, I like putting a lot of subtlety in these games, such that there's where you could play it for 100 hours and still not find things. I love that, and that's the case. I mean, I have people playing the original Wasteland 20 years later, still discovering new stuff, right? And I think that's what makes the world really alive. So I always have this rub between wanting to tell them everything, because it kind of takes something away. So anyway, it's kind of a longer conversation, but so that's just something that I always wrestle with.
Yeah, totally. So we have a question from Chris. And this is totally related to something you were talking about earlier about that anxiety before you hit launch. Chris says, it was quickly obvious that your project would fund, but did you have a plan B ready to go in terms of getting the media exposure if things had gone differently?
A plan B to getting media exposure. I think I know what Chris is sort of getting at. It's sort of like many projects launch and don't have that immediate success that you had. And that a lot of people talk about that momentum in the early days as being critical to the success of a project. That said, not necessarily true if you can sort of find the right media or voice or narrative to then kind of buoy your project and get it where you need it to be. I don't know. I mean, I take my best shot out of the gate on everything that I have. I don't really have a plan B in that regard. I mean, to me, I have a plan that has, okay, here's what's going to happen over the campaign. And it's difficult to get things that are newsworthy post-campaign. One of the things that's been interesting about this one is that we announced Bard's Tale 4 back in January. It was massive press coverage. Like, everybody covered it. Then when we announced, okay, we're going live tomorrow, it's like half the press covered it. And so I thought, wow, so that was kind of a real eye-opener lesson that they had felt like they had already covered it, all because of a tweet that I did back in January. And so that became the press. So we ended up actually working much harder than we thought to get the press. So, but I do have my campaign, and I have there's a series of updates that you want to do, some which are just informational focused on the people who have already backed you. They're not going to bring in a lot more backers because that's really not what they're catered towards, but it's making sure the information is getting into your backers' hands. And then there's other ones that are more outward focused to say, well, this might get in some new people,
right,
and the press to cover you. But you're lucky to come up with 3 of those during the campaign, because again, it's very hard to get the press to pay attention to you.
yeah,
And we had a real difficult one because E3. I'll tell you, we went into E3 on our second week or so, and that was a really tough time because you had all the press was focused on E3. You had the Steam summer sale going on. You had the GOG summer sale, and then Fallout 4 gets announced and says basically it's coming now. Go pre-order. So people were going on to Amazon and buying Fallout 4. So now I'm up against Christmas sales at the same time. It was crazy. It was crazy. So, but anyway, short answer is no. We don't have a plan B. We have a plan A that we just try to execute against and do our best.
Yeah, but I mean, great lessons there, right? Is that there's usually one big press moment that if you launch during something like E3, when there's tons of other announcements going on, it's maybe even harder to get the word out. So I think good stuff.
Yeah. One other thing about launching, which I think is worthy of note, is what a big deal in terms of, in my mind, a game changer, the way Sony launched Shenmue at E3. They had 1 million eyeballs. You had a major corporation their size saying, hey, we have a Kickstarter, go there right now, you know, and then boom, it took off. That was a big deal.
It was a big deal. It absolutely was a big deal. Our servers felt it.
Yeah, well, I know. I saw it.
So I'm gonna. We've got a couple minutes left. I'm gonna fire at least one more question at you. You think the top one? Is that what you're saying? Okay. So it's from Tal. Will Bard's Tale 4 be mod friendly? Can we create our own dungeons to play and share with the community?
Yeah, again, not really sure on that one. Creating mod tools is to do it properly is kind of a major investment. And so, obviously we want the core experience number one. And so mod tools, I would say not at this point, but things could change, post-launch and with funding and that sort of thing, that we would look at that. But I would say that I wouldn't think for now that is viable.
Right. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
So final question for you, and I think it's knowing that we have just 50-ish hours left in your campaign.
Right.
We have a message from France, a guy named Baptiste. He wants to know, he says, hello.
Hello, Baptiste.
He says, I was wondering what upcoming technologies are you the most excited about, VR, hologram, not just in the perspective of gaming, but also as a user?
Yeah. Well, I guess in fairness, I've only got to experience VR, so it's hard for me. I hear about AR and how wonderful it is, but I haven't really got to experience it. So I've only used sort of some of Oculus' latest technology.
Right.
And I've had a lot of technology come over my span in the business, and some of it is where it's like everybody's excited, and you're like, I don't get it. I mean, the Kinect was a little bit like that way for me. There was everybody raving about it, but I'm using it, and I'm like, I'm not buying it, but everyone else is excited. Maybe I'm missing the boat. But I tell you what, would you strap on these headsets and because your eyes are telling you you're there, and when I look over a cliff and I get that sensation, that's powerful stuff. So I find that stuff is fascinating. And there was a great demo that Oculus did where this dinosaur came around the corner and it came running towards me and it put its snout right in my face. And I had this, I wanted to back off. And of course, now for me, I'm thinking Bard's Tale, man. I'm in a museum, I'm in a dungeon, but to me, that was like resonating for me. So I have to say I'm pretty excited about VR from my own kind of personal experiences.
Yeah. I think that's the sort of general feeling. But there is so much exciting stuff happening right now. So TBD, right?
Well, it's at a breakneck speed with whatever news. It's extrapolating in terms of new stuff coming out.
Totally.
Exponential, not extrapolating. Yeah.
I heard exponential. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because I know I'd get a tweet about using the wrong word. So darn it.
All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. It's been a lightning fast 30 minutes with you. Thank you to all the viewers and fans who've tuned in and enjoyed this conversation. We've got some positive comments here and on Twitter. Good luck with the next few days.
Well, yeah, I know a couple more days, and I hope that I make a certain style of game that doesn't get funded any other way. So I hope if people like what we do and like this style of game, they'll continue to step up because we're not here without them.
Well, it sounds like you're 100% in. So who wouldn't be? So thanks everybody. We do this every Wednesday. Always a different creator. This week is Carla Hall, so any food fans out there, join us. We'll ask Carla lots of fun questions. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Thanks.